I've been through the rain and I weathered the storm, I'm not looking to stop. My God sent the angels, I'm good when I move like I move with the mob. Tears in the valley, this life is a jungle, I pray to the top. Life is a marathon, I'm running to him, I'm shaking off weights and I'm done with the fear, cause I'm running with God. Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody, to Thankful for the Day podcast. We are live in our studio and getting ready to put together another episode for you. We're figuring it out. JT and I had a session in here about a week ago, and we accomplished nothing other than learning how to navigate and manipulate Adobe and Adobe Flash Pro or whatever it is. So, nonetheless, here we are, still delivering episodes. Like we said, if it just came down to it, we would just sit here and JT would just turn his phone on and we'd record it that way. We are feeling very motivated to keep going and keep recording and keep sharing the story because we are hearing from people. I'm hearing from people. Sarah's hearing from people that are commenting and just reaching out to us after they've watched an episode and how it's impacted them. And so it's doing exactly what we have felt like we were led to do, which is connect people and give them something to talk about in terms of advocacy, their health, somebody that they love, etc. So with all of that, we welcome you to the Thankful for the Day podcast. I am Mychal Doring. JT is with me, and we're in our studio in Bloomington, Indiana. We thought we would take today. We're gonna transition away from storytelling a little bit, and I'm feeling compelled to share an episode about nutrition. And a couple things that I'm going to get into before we really get into the nutrition. Number one is our board has changed. We have moved some things around, and aren't we just so cute and so clever? And you can see that we have nutrition on the board because that's what we're going to talk about. Because, again, I feel like this is a format. People are listening, so why not take advantage of the format? So I was at church today. I don't have a church home per se. I don't necessarily feel bad about not having a church home. We had a church home for a very long time at Zion with Pastor Andy and the Upward program that we led and were introduced to from Bob Payton, and then that we led for so long. I say we because although I was at the forefront of it, it definitely was a joint effort, sacrifices from myself, but also from Sarah and my family, and time that I could have spent with them, or energy, or stresses that came into our relationship because of that program. And so it definitely was a joint effort from all of us. And I think very fondly of those times. I think we ended up spending close to about 8 or 9 years at Zion, and really enjoyed that time in the community that we built there. There are just gobs of people that when I see them, I immediately smile and hug them. And the only way that I know them is from that congregation, from that church. And so I'm incredibly thankful for that. And I guess maybe where I'm going with this is I just want you to be encouraged. If you don't have a church home, that's okay. God can work anywhere. I think the saying goes, where 2 or more of us gather, he is there. So, there's a lot of times where I think JT and I are having church in here and, we're in a conference room, there's no cross, there's no pulpit. But whenever we're talking and sharing his word or how we think he's moving or not moving in our life, that's church. So just be encouraged. If you don't have a home, keep looking. And if you're not motivated to look, that's okay. You don't have to be. I've had some pretty powerful conversations with God in a pasture. I've had some pretty powerful conversations with God in my fancy reclining chair. And I've had a lot of powerful conversations with God in my car. So those things can happen anywhere. I think why pastors and preachers are so adamant about getting people in the building is, one, it's nice for us to see that there are others searching and going through and struggling and thriving the same way that we are, kind of that safety in numbers, if you will. And it's good for us to be reminded. It's good for us to stay in practice. And, it's no different than diets or your eating habits or new habits that you're trying to create. If you do them every day, they start and are more easily to become a habit. If you do them every other day, they're less likely to become a habit. And if you do them once a week, you're building, and that's great, but it's less likely that it's going to stick. And so if you can join together on certain days throughout the week, see some other people, know that they're maybe struggling or going through some things, and that you're not by yourself, and you get to share this word with them. And, the whole idea is that it just keeps adding to your habit, and then your habit becomes a consistent thing that you do without even having to work on it. And I think that's where we're building and going to. So anyway, I go to church with JT periodically, and so walked into church today. Shout out the West Side. And, the pastor there, John Robertson, is it's a gentleman that I am finding I enjoy listening to how he explains the Bible, the verses, and whatever he's felt compelled to preach on that day. He connects, I seem to connect to his language very well. And so anyway, walked in today, was running just a few minutes late, but no big deal. God, wants you there on time, a minute late, 5 minutes late, he don't care. He just, if you're showing up with the intention to show up to be fed, it doesn't matter. Just show up. So anyway, they hand out a little flyer, and usually on one side it kind of has some stats, and on the other side it gives you a little breakdown or a little cliff note version, if you will, of what the day service is going to be about. And so I grab my seat and, kind of settle in, and I'm looking at the stats, the attendance from last week and this, that, and the other. And I flip it over, and the very first phrase at the top of this is a phrase from A.W. Tozer, and it goes like this. It is doubtful whether God can bless someone greatly until he has hurt him deeply. And I won't get into the vocabulary and things like that, but it is doubtful whether God can bless someone greatly until he, and the he is not capitalized. So that leads me to believe that is not, we're not talking about God there. We're not talking about the Messiah. We're not talking about Jesus. We're talking about he. So human. So it is doubtful whether God can bless someone greatly until he has hurt him deeply. And of course, I internalize that immediately. And I think about my situation and the situation in which we've shared with you. And heck, just coming off of episode 9 was quite honestly probably one of the most emotional episodes that I've had. I feel like I saw more of my forehead veins in that episode than I had seen prior. So that led me to believe that maybe it was a little bit more emotional. But I thought, man, I was hurt pretty deep. And I've been hurt by a lot of things. But in particular, I was hurt most recently by cancer diagnosis. And what an opportunity that was for God to bless me. And a little further down on the sheet, this simple sentence was typed, and it says, "We impress people with our strengths, but we connect with people through shared weaknesses and brokenness." And I thought, oh man, like, okay. All right. What a message for me to receive today. And I found it fitting in a couple different ways. The first way is, for those that have known me for a long time, my size and my strength, college football player, high school football player, college track athlete, high school track athlete. I love the weight room. I've talked about, how the weight room has helped me. A lot of times it's very therapeutic. And if you talk to a lot of the young humans I've interacted with, I would think one of the first things they would tell you is, yeah, he's big, he's strong. And so I've, always kind of carried a sense of pride about strength and my strength in particular. And, pride is a good thing, but can also be a very scary thing and can be a very deceiving thing. And Pastor Sarah Ross reminded me years ago during one of our upward trials, during, and we were just talking kind of in general, but I think she was sharing with me some of her things, and, I was sharing with her, and she said, there's a verse in the Bible that says pride before fall. And that is pride before fall. Those three words have resonated with me for years. Since she said that, it's something that I think about, not daily, probably not even weekly, but I would say monthly. At some point or another, I'm reminded my pride will get me in trouble, and to not be prideful. And so I think about how much pride I put in my strength, and I'm always supposed to be strong, and, as teachers and mentors and coaches, we're supposed to have the answers and always lead the right way and always do the right thing. And we fail at that sometimes. And sometimes we fail a kid. We don't lead them the way that they needed us to lead them. And we don't handle the situation the way that we should have or could have handled the situation best. But I think, man, we impress people with our strength. Yeah, I impress people being so strong. And even our pulmonologist talked about, how impressive it was, how big my chest was. I think at the time before all of this started happening, I was rolling around like a 54, 56-inch chest, and so impressive. And okay. The second part to that sentence is, but we connect with people through shared weaknesses and brokenness. And I was very quickly reminded that my podcast, this podcast, the Thankful for the Day podcast, probably doesn't have maybe anybody that watches after the first episode, if the first episode talks about how impressive my strength is. Who wants to watch that? Who wants to listen to that? My wife doesn't, and she'd be probably the number one person to sign up for that. And she's not going to listen to that for multiple times. So, but what people are listening to is the realness, the weakness, the brokenness, the faults, the good things too. So early on in this journey, the verse or verses or the implication that God will be boastful in your weakness for God's sake. Be boastful in that weakness. And if you're boastful in that weakness and bring the glory to Him, things will be okay. And so, there were several times, multiple times during this journey where I've tried to expose my weakness. Normally, we try really hard to keep those things bottled up. We want to, keep up with the Joneses or the Smiths, the next door neighbors. We want to have all of our shit together. We want to be buttoned up. We want our kids to act right. We want our marriage to look perfect. And we want, to just be buttoned up. And that's not real. There are moments where that's real. There are days where things go really well. But there are days where things don't go really well. And Sarah and I have a great relationship. It's a strong relationship. It's a relationship that we work on weekly. But there are still some days that things aren't perfect. And I misunderstand, or I miscommunicate, or I allow pride to get in the way, or she misunderstands, or doesn't communicate effectively, or allows her pride to get in the way. And that's just a part of being human. And so I won't go too much more into that, but I just felt compelled to start this episode off with the acknowledgement of it is doubtful whether God can bless someone greatly until he has hurt them deeply. And without the acknowledgement of we impress people with our strengths, but we connect with people through shared weakness and brokenness. And that's what we're trying to do here, is connect with people through our brokenness and our weakness. And we're pushing, 14 months from diagnosis, and to think that I would be boastful in my weakness now is a far cry from anything that I would have done on my own 14 months ago. And so I just felt like I should share that and should start the episode off with some acknowledgement of that, and trying to be reflective on the growth and the opportunities that we have in front of us, and how we can be better going forward. And I just wanted to share that because it hit home with me. I was always focused on my strength and my size and my pride in that. And I should have just as much pride and just as much boastfulness in my weakness and in my brokenness as I do my strength. So I want to encourage you to process that however you want.
I've been through the rain and I weathered the storm, I'm not looking to stop. My God sent the angels, I'm good when I move like I move with the mob. I'm running with God.